Hey there, it's Mackenzie, your host of Winning. We're looking for sponsors for the podcast. If you have a business that you would like to promote to thousands of people, send us an email at podcastwinning@gmail.com or send us a message on social media. I cannot wait to hear from you. Now on to the show.
Winning is your guide to making it in business. Join our award-winning host and entrepreneur, Mackenzie Kilshaw, and special guests in casual conversations that will educate and inspire you on your business journey. Winning will help you learn the hard lessons the easy way with guidance from celebrated entrepreneurs and business leaders. It's fun. It's informative. It's winning.
Hey everybody, it's Mackenzie Kilshaw, the host of Winning, and welcoming you to Business Puns Part 4. This is the final episode of my business pun advice. And in the 4-part series, I've walked you through creating your business plan. Without a comprehensive business plan, you are not likely to succeed. We all know that research and preparation are the keys to success. So if you have a well thought out plan, you're more likely to do well and to be successful in your journey. So I'm so excited that we're wrapping this up. My business plan was 77 pages long, and that was the start of my entrepreneurial career. And I know that because it was so thought out and planned that it truly did set me up for success. So I went through everything and, did pros and cons and what could happen that would be good and what could happen that would be bad. And I think it did give me more information to be able to be successful. So if you have not already, be sure that you listen to parts 1, 2, and 3. We cover sales, marketing, employees, and so much more in there. Non-disclosure, so many things. So make sure you tune into those as well. We're going to get right into the last section of the business plan, which is operating expenses. And I will be honest with you, finances are my absolutely least favorite thing in business. So maybe that's why these are last. I'm not sure. But I love the creativity of planning and creating things, but I don't love number crunching. You need to number crunch though. If you want to be successful, you have to set yourself up for financial success, or you likely aren't going to get anywhere. So you must start with the question, what are your operating expenses? So this includes your monthly fixed and variable expenses. Fixed expenses are those that stay the same each month. So your lease is probably the same monthly. Payroll can be variable if you do have seasonal employees or people that work hourly and not the same hours, but it typically is a little more on the fixed side. Your power bill, your phone, your internet, insurance, all of those things are usually the same amount every single month. And then, of course, variable expenses will change month to month and can include things like training, shipping costs, the cost of your goods sold. So if you're bringing in more inventory or more items, obviously you're going to pay more. Your taxes, because your taxes are based on your sales. So those are very variable. Travel, obviously, if you have to travel for work or you go to a show or something like that, then you're going to have that travel pop up. So you can put your expenses into these two categories and be sure that you have a miscellaneous fund for the unknowns or expenses that come up that you didn't budget for. And I can assure you, these are going to happen. They're going to happen more often than you think they are. There's always those things that pop up that you need extra money for. So make sure that you have an amount set aside for that. Rainy day fund, if you will. If you're the main employee of your business or the only employee, or if you have staff, be sure that someone else knows what things need to be paid and when, as well as bank account passwords, in the event of what I call the hit by the bus theory. So what happens if you get hit by a bus? And I mean, I don't mean this literally, although I guess it could happen. But if you can't work, if you're the only one that knows what to do and you can't work or you need to be off for a period of time, you have to ensure that another staff member knows what to do and knows these things, because if not, you could be in a big amount of trouble, right? If your expenses aren't getting paid. So make sure that you train another staff member. Also, there is insurance for entrepreneurs. So in the event that you can't work, that you'll be able to collect insurance to be able to pay somebody to do it. And I actually did have that insurance when I had my store, just in that event. What if I got sick? What if I had to have surgery or something and I can't physically be there? How am I going to be able to still collect a paycheck for myself to be able to pay my mortgage and live, but be able to pay someone else too? Okay, your point of sale system, your POS system. Have you thought about these? So what POS system will you use to collect money from your clients and customers? How will you track sales and profits and taxes? So look for a POS system that will do all of this for you. There are so many options and most are very efficient and cost effective. I used Shopify, still do for my online store. It's $29 a month. It did all those things I listed. It also was my website for my online store. So $29 a month, not costly, right? The other thing you have to remember is who will be your financial control? So is that your bookkeeper or your accountant? Are you going to have a CFO or yourself? So you need someone to be in charge of finances, frankly, on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, even yearly basis. So you stay on top of things financially, especially if you're collecting cash. I mean, if you get cash, you might be making deposits every day or every other day. But you have to make sure that you stay on top of things because finances are the one thing that if you get behind, it's extremely difficult to catch up. You don't want to have yourself in that position where you're trying to play catch up because it's really stressful and really hard. That happened to me during COVID when we first had to close. And you almost feel like you're scrambling to try to make that money, right? It's not a great place to be in. Okay, let's talk about the legal environment for a minute. So this is financial, but also a little bit into the operations side. So when you first start, or if you're physically expanding your current business, do you need permits to renovate or to make any changes? What about to operate? This is really important too. So to operate, do you need a license? For example, if you're a restaurant, do you need a liquor license? And what goes into that? And what's the cost for that? Little things like that people forget about, that's a few $100s here or there can really add up. So make sure that you think about that. Now, into the financial side again, who is going to file your taxes and your year-end taxes? And what's the cost for this? So remember, you're collecting tax from your customers and you have the responsibility to pass that on to the government. So taxes, you have to pay taxes. And I'm not just talking year end. I'm talking your state, provincial, wherever you live. Most of the time you will collect the tax and then remit it. So if you collect taxes from the government, you have to pay them to the government. You also are going to have to get a tax number. So you need to apply for these. You probably have a federal tax number and either a state or provincial tax number. So you're going to have to go and apply for that and get those numbers and do that now. If you have not started yet, do that now. So it's just done. Most of them, it's online. You can sign up and have everything there online and you can remit there. They've made it easy, but make sure you have that set up. You'll also need to register your business with the government. And that could include a local business as well. So once again, you're going to want to talk to your government. So I had a lawyer do that for me. So the lawyer created my business, and whether that's a partnership, sole proprietorship, whatever you're doing, and registered. And then I contacted my local city because I needed also a city business license. So make sure that you have these because once again, you could get yourself into trouble if you don't. These things are non-negotiables. So have it all set up properly. And then when you need to pay or remit, it's all done. Remittances as well can be monthly, quarterly, yearly. So a lot of it is based on how much your sales are. So make sure you check that out too. And then set yourself a reminder that you need to pay that and have it all figured out and paid on time. You will incur penalties and late charges if you don't. So be on top of that. It's really important. Don't spend money on penalties and interest if you don't have to, right? Okay, moving on to inventory or the products that you're going to manufacture or sell. How much do you need? So start backwards, right? Remember we talked about how much money you needed to have to pay all your bills and make a profit. So figure out how much is your average inventory item and then work backwards, right? So figure out, I need to sell 50 of these in a month to be able to make money. So you need to have at least 50 of them available, right? How are you going to track inventory? So you have to make sure that you know how much you have, especially if you have a physical store and an online store together, because remember that people that are buying from the online store, it's coming out of your physical store. So you need to have availability for people showing up at your store to buy something, right? You have to have enough. Can your POS system track this for you? So that's important, especially at year end, because you'll have to do a year end inventory to see how much you have. And from experience, I still counted everything and made sure I have everything, because you know what happens in a business? Unfortunately, theft happens. Things get damaged and you might think you have something and you don't. So it's really important that at that year-end inventory time that I used my POS system as my kind of base. And I literally printed out sheets that said what I had. And then we went around the store and yeah, we have that. No, we don't. If we didn't have it, I fixed my inventory through my POS system so that it was accurate. And then I knew exactly what I had for inventory. Even on the logistical side of items, how are you going to physically price them and display them? Like literally, are you putting a sticker on that says $9.99? Or are you going to have a shelf with a label on it? How are you doing that? And of course, display. I mean, display is so important. You have to have a great customer experience and you don't want people to have to search and dig and things aren't where they're supposed to be, can't find things because it will turn people off from buying. And I did talk about this before, but what happens with seasonal items? So if you bring something in for Christmas and it doesn't sell at Christmas, what are you doing with it? So are you putting it on sale or are you storing them? Again, if you're storing it, where is it going to be stored? You have to think about these things before you start out. Okay, let's talk about suppliers. So who are your suppliers? Where do you get your items from? So if you're making something, you still need the raw goods to produce that thing. Or if you're buying something, a physical item to sell, where are you getting it from? So do you have contracts with them? Do you have an order requirement or a minimum order? I mean, some businesses say you have to order once a month or you have to order $3,000 worth of product. You have to know that before you start. And these things, can you negotiate them? Of course you can, right? If I'm in my clothing store, if they said you need to order, $2,000 a month and you have to order every month and whatever, if I can order more than that, maybe they'll give me a discount. If I can order less than that, say, hey, I can't order that much, but can I do maybe a 2-month minimum, something like that. Will they give you net terms? So basically you get the product and then you pay later. So there's usually net 30, 60, or 90. And then you'll get the item. You'll have to pay it back in 30, 60, or 90 days. And it gives you the ability to sell the product and then pay for them. The other thing too, that a lot of companies will do is consignment. So they'll send you all the items. They'll say, okay, you have a 2-month period to sell these. At the end of those 2 months, you tell them what you sold, you pay for those items, you send everything else back. And I can tell you from experience at a clothing store, consignment was great. Because then if it was winter and you had winter coats left over, you could send them back. A lot of companies will not offer you consignment, but ask for it because they might be willing to, right? And unless you ask, you just don't know the answer to that. So be sure that you ask your suppliers these questions and negotiate, right? The worst they can say is no, but you should always ask because guess what? They might say yes. So, hey, I really want to bring your stuff into my store. I really like what you have, but I've never tried it before. I don't know how it's going to go. Can we start out on consignment? See how things progress, right? It gives them the opportunity to get their items into your hands to sell. And it also gives you the opportunity to not have to pay a large amount upfront. Okay, so talking about financing, let's talk about financing for your clients or your customers in terms of credit. So do you offer credit to your customers or must they pay when they purchase? So lots of times, right? You go to buy something and they say, yeah, you got 30 days to pay us. So a few things to remember here. How will you keep track of this in your books? Because obviously you have to know that that is still an outstanding amount. What if you offer them credit and they don't pay? So what do you have set up? Is that an interest fee? Is that you need to send someone after them? I don't mean a physical person, but how are you going to ensure that you get that money? Because if you're out that money, you're out that money, right? I would do special orders at my store and I always got a deposit. Always, always, always got a deposit. If I'm special ordering something for you and you decide not to buy it, I still have to be compensated somehow because now I have an item to sell, right? So I asked for a deposit, non-refundable. And that way, if they didn't take the item and I had to sell it on sale or something like that, I still made my margin. And obviously, if they did take the item, the deposit went towards the purchase of that item. So they weren't out then. How are you going to invoice them? So if you have a POS system that's robust, you should be able to invoice right through your POS system. And you can also use bookkeeping software like QuickBooks or something like that to send and track invoices. You have to make sure that you're sending and tracking these, right? Because you don't want to say it's due within 2 months and 2 months down the line, you forget about it and you're out that money. So you have to be on top of this. Remember when I said you need someone in charge of your finances daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, things like this are the reason why. Okay, I want to talk about your initial financials for your plan. So when you're doing your business plan, you have to figure out what are your startup costs. You need to know how much it's going to cost you to start up and, of course, then to run. So when we're talking about startup costs, generally, these are the things that they include. Your lease down payment. So most places, you have to pay 1 month of a down payment, and then that usually gets applied to your last month that you're in that space. So if you're in a 5-year lease, the last month of your 5-year lease, they'll apply that. Fixtures and equipment. So do you need shelving in your space? Do you need a computer? Do you need a desk? 20 desks? Do you need hangers? Do you need 500 hangers, right? You have to figure these out. And it seems kind of crazy to have to go through and figure out how many hangers do I need, but you need to figure that out. And if you're spending $2 a hanger and you need 500, that's getting to be a large expense, right? What about signage for your business? So you need to let people know where you are and what you are. You need an outdoor sign. And I can tell you that those outdoor signs are both beautiful and expensive. I think my sign in Saskatoon, when I first opened my business, was about $8,000. And I was shocked, but that's just what they are. And it was beautiful, LED, lit up all night, but it's an expense. Also remember too with signage that a lot of businesses, if you have a strip mall or something like that, will have a big sign at the street with all different businesses in there. That's likely going to be an additional monthly cost. So it could be included in your lease. You can ask for it to be included, right? Negotiate that. But that's something that if you want that, it could be an additional charge. Plus you need to pay for the sign. What about supplies? So if you're starting up an office, you need office supplies, paper and pens and printers and staplers and all things like that. For me, it was bags and tissue and hangers and shipping bags, things like that. Website development. We already talked about a website. You need one. If you don't have one, you need one. Who's making that for you? It's a cost, right? And your branding. Who is making your logo for you? That is a cost. Obviously, inventory. You have to start out with inventory. I have different kind of thoughts on inventory, but I'll give you my best advice. I think it's a little bit better to start out with more inventory than you maybe think you need. Because if someone comes into your business and you don't have anything to sell, you make zero money, right? You can always have a sale. If you have suppliers that are able to ship quick, right? And you can get it in a few days, then that gives you a little bit of a buffer. Because if you can call someone or email someone and say, I need more, and you have it in 3 or 4 days, that's good. But if not, you don't want to run out, right? Because if you've got nothing to sell, you've got no money coming in. Your security system, you need a security system. What if somebody breaks in? You need to be notified, right? And most security systems you pay monthly for. Obviously, your utilities, power, electricity, telephone, internet, all of those things, right? You have to know what they're going to be. Your renovations to your space. So you can talk with your landlord or about lease improvements, right? So lease improvements are very negotiable. And those would be, okay, I think it's going to cost me $50,000 to, put new flooring in and new lights or whatever it happens to be in your space. And oftentimes your landlord will either pay for those or give you some money for those. Make sure you negotiate this, okay? Because where are you getting that? Let's say it's $50,000. Where's that money coming from? If you're taking out a loan for this, right, you need to know that. But if your landlord's willing to include it as a lease improvement, way better for you. And typically how that works is you spend the money, and then once it's completed, they'll pay you back for that. And that's for things like flooring, any fixtures that are staying. So if you leave the space in 5 years, then it's there for the next person, right? And that's part of the reason why the landlord will pay for it. Negotiate that, please. Please negotiate that. Licenses and permits. So do you need a building permit? Do you need a license to run? I talked a few minutes ago about getting liquor license. You might need that. Health, if you're opening a restaurant, right? You might have to have the health inspector come. What permit do you need for that? Do you need a food safety course, right? You have to think about all this. It costs money and it takes time. Insurance, you need insurance. You need insurance. You need insurance. It seems like a cost that doesn't do anything for you, but I had a flood in one of my spaces at one time, and it was like $50,000. If I didn't have insurance, like I'm out that money. I need to come up with that money, right? So I'm telling you from experience, might seem like something you can skip, but please don't. Obviously, advertising and promotions. I mean, once you open up, you need to know people, or you need to let people know that you're there. And you should actually start advertising and promoting before you open. So you're building that hype and you're building that excitement so that when you open, people want to come, right? And then, of course, my favorite is a miscellaneous fund. Like, no one wants to have to plan for a rainy day, but you need to have some money left at the end of the day for those things that you didn't think about, because they're going to come up, and it might only be a few $100s, but it might be a few thousand. So make sure you set money aside for that. So this whole list of kind of the general startup costs, how are you paying for that? So where are you getting funding from? You're going to get a loan. And if you get a loan, what is your debt repayment plan? So usually you pay back things monthly, right? Like a car loan or anything like that. But you have to make sure that now that's another cost, right? That's another monthly cost that has to go into your financials because you have to pay that back. How long is it going to take you to pay it back? If you've signed a 3-year lease and your loan is 5 years, what's your plan after that 3 years? You still have 2 years to pay back a loan. Are you going to stay in that space, move that space, right? Like things you need to consider. You have to also have this all in place before you start, because let me tell you, and sorry if any banking people are listening to this, but banks are slow. There's a lot of paperwork that you have to get approved. Maybe they can't approve you for what you asked for, and then you need a cosigner or a partner, or you have to produce some of your own money. So if you're asking for $100,000 and they say we can only give you 70, what are you going to do for that other 30? Right? You can't expect that money to come and then it doesn't. And now what do? You've messed yourself up from the start. Okay. Something to note, when you're borrowing money, even for your business, especially if you're a sole proprietor, you might have to put up personal collateral. So like your home, for example, in the event that you can't pay it back. So is this an option for you? Are you prepared to do this? Right? You need to have those conversations and thoughts, because if something goes wrong and your house is your collateral and you can't pay that back I mean, you're maybe facing bankruptcy or you have to sell your home or whatever it is. And I know you don't want to think about this right now when you're starting out, but it is something that you have to consider. So have those conversations with your banker, and make sure that you know everything, right? Don't go in this blind. Like, make sure that you have all of the statistics in front of you. A huge thank you to our sponsor, Just For You Day Spa and Wellness. Just For You is Canada's premier day spa with 5 locations in Alberta and Saskatchewan. The award-winning luxury spa features Leah Reese cosmetics and iconic Betty jewelry that you can also purchase online. Visit www.justforyoudaySpa.com to book your service or to purchase a gift card. Okay, you're going to need to create an operating forecast. So you need to create and estimate the sales and expenses for a year. Like, do it for a whole year, especially if you have seasonal times, right? Because retail sales, December is going to be crazy good. January is going to stink. So you need to make sure you have enough money in January to pay for it. So you'll use your total cost per month, so fixed and variable, and make sure you include inventory fluctuations, like I just talked about, for your seasonal periods. And remember, we talked about the break-even point. You'll want to include that in your forecast too. So the break-even point is what you need to sell in a day, week, month, or whatever your costs are to pay your cost. And you guys, that does not include a profit, and you have to make money. You can't be a business that doesn't make money, because guess what? You're not a business anymore. You're not going to be around. So create a balance sheet, and that's a snapshot of your current assets and liabilities. And when you first start out, your liabilities are probably, I can almost guarantee it, going to be more than your assets, right? Because you just put all this money out and you haven't collected anything yet. You also want to create an income statement that will indicate when you'll start to make a profit. So that could be, I'll make a profit within 6 months, 3 months, a year, 2 years, depends how much debt you're starting out with, right? Or where you're starting in that financial scale. You also need cash to survive. Cash flow is king. You need cash to survive. So create a cash flow statement to show your cash in and out. And these are projected, right, when you first start. And like we talked about before, you start with your break-even point, go from there. If you don't know how to make these, you need to pay someone that does. Let me tell you, I have a business degree and I did not do mine. I got an accountant to do them because I knew if I made a mistake from the get-go, I was in big trouble. And I do not like finances. I paid an accountant to do it, and it was the best thing I ever did, because my time trying to figure out how to create a balance sheet was not well spent. My time was well spent marketing, talking to people, networking, getting people to know about my business. Okay, so we know it's obvious you're going to need money. And there's so many ways to get funding. So where are you going to access it? So remember when I said you start out that big list, where's that money coming from? So you can use personal money or savings if you have. Obviously a loan. And where are those loans going to be from? So you could consider, and I know it's not an option for everybody, but family, maybe family members are like, oh, I can help you out, or I'm interested to give you a loan. It doesn't have to be a gift, although it could be a gift, right? But you can pay them back with interest like anybody else. Banks, obviously, development companies, investors. I got initial funding from BDC, so Bank of Development Canada, and it was basically like a loan, right? Where I just paid monthly. Don't forget about grants. So grants are money that you don't need to pay back. There are so many grants available, and Google is your best friend on these. So there's government grants, there's private organizations that do grants. Make sure you do your research here, because I can guarantee you're probably eligible for some. And it might only be a few $1,000s. Who cares? It's a few $1,000s you don't have to come up with, right? So do your research on that. Google. There are so many grants, like it's almost overwhelming at first because you have to apply, right? And it's what are you eligible for? But that's what I would say. Make sure you're eligible first before you apply. Don't spend the time to apply if you're not eligible. Okay, what are your capital requirements to start and then survive? So I would say if you need so much money to do your renovations, buy your inventory, train your staff, And then give yourself like a 2 or 3 month buffer, right? Because like, what if you open your doors and it's a huge snowstorm for 3 days and nobody comes and you've had a week with no sales, right? I mean, probably not going to happen, but it could. Undercapitalization is one of the main reasons why new businesses fail. Frankly, they just didn't project how much money they would need. So they often, new owners don't think about all the costs associated with starting and expanding, if that's what you're doing. So, hello, that's why I created a podcast to help you. I was pretty lucky because I had a lot of help. But a lot of people don't have help and they don't know where to start. And they maybe didn't think about that monthly cost of the security system, right? Things like that. You also need to think about your financial risk. So how much do you stand to lose if things don't go right? Remember when I said you might have to use your house as collateral? Like that has to be in your head, right? Are you going into a saturated market? Does the industry have financial stability? Does the environment affect your business? So if you're in agriculture, I mean, rain or drought might affect your business, right? So think about those things. How are they going to affect you? Obviously, on the more positive side, what are your financial opportunities? So are you entering a growing market? Are you innovating a market or an industry? Or maybe you're filling a void in the marketplace, right? So if you're filling a void, you're probably going to have sales right off the bat. And finally, something that no one wants to think about when you start out, but you have to be realistic here, is an exit strategy. So financially, what if things go wrong? Will you sell your business or will you get a partner or maybe an investor? I know it's hard to think about this when you're starting your business, but it's really necessary. And I do believe that if you have a comprehensive plan that's well researched and that you've gotten help with an accountant for, and your accountant says, yeah, I think that, you can do this. This is how much money you'll need, but I think this is how much money you'll make, then you won't need to stress over it. That's the end of business plans. Thank you guys so much for listening to my personal advice on them. It is a lot of work to build your business plan, but it's necessary to show you the areas where you're going to do really well and excel in, and the ones that you need help in, right? Listen, we're not all perfect. You're going to need help, and that's just fine because everybody needs help, right? My advice is to pay a professional to help in the areas that you aren't sure in, and spend the time in the places where you know you can do well. So if you're a good networker and a good marketer, spend your time there, pay the accountant to work on your finances. If you guys have any questions about the business plans, message me on social media. I am so happy to help out, and it's me that reads everything and replies. Pop me a message. I'll be your friend and give you the answer. Or if I don't know the answer, I'll direct you into the place that I think is best for you to get some answers. So thanks again for listening to the business plan episodes. And I wish everyone here listening the most success in your business journey. Thanks for listening to Winning. Be sure to subscribe to get all of our new episodes. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others. Post about it on social media and leave a rating and review wherever you listen to Winning. To catch all of the latest from us, you can follow Winning Podcast on Instagram at winning_podcast, Facebook at Winning Podcast, and on Twitter at Winning Pod. Winning was created and is produced by me, Mackenzie Kilshaw. Music created by Summer Furby. Editing by Seth Armstrong. Special thanks to Shauna Foster for voicing our opening. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.